Commander Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the observation deck's cold metal railing as the research vessel Aurora's Dream drifted through the Kepler 442 system. 3 months into their deep space archaeological mission, the crew had grown comfortable with the routine of cataloging dead civilizations. Elena watched her team of 12 specialists work below in the main laboratory, their voices a gentle hum of scientific discovery. "Commander, we're picking up some interesting readings from the fourth planet," called out Dr. James Chen, the mission's lead xenoarchaeologist. His dark eyes sparkled with the kind of excitement that came from finding something truly significant. "The ruins down there aren't just old, they're ancient. Pre-Galactic Confederation ancient." Elena nodded, her weathered face reflecting years of similar discoveries. At 42, she had led more deep space expeditions than any other human commander, earning respect even from the more established alien species in the Galactic Confederation. The scars on her left cheek told stories of encounters with hostile environments, but her steady brown eyes spoke of someone who never backed down from a challenge. "How ancient are we talking, James?" she asked, making her way down to the main lab where holographic displays showed the planet's surface. "Initial scans suggest 12,000 years, possibly older," Dr. Chen replied, his fingers dancing across the control interface. "The architectural style doesn't match anything in our databases. The structures appear to be built from a crystalline material that's somehow still intact after all this time." Dr. Sarah Kim, the team's cultural anthropologist, looked up from her workstation. "Commander, if these ruins predate the Confederation by that much, we could be looking at a first contact scenario with a completely unknown civilization's legacy." Elena felt the familiar thrill of discovery coursing through her veins. Each expedition brought the possibility of uncovering something that would change humanity's understanding of the galaxy. The Galactic Confederation consisted of 47 known species, but humanity was still considered one of the newer members, having joined only 80 years ago. "All right, people. Let's prep for surface deployment," Elena announced. "I want a full archaeological team down there within 6 hours. Standard protocols, minimal impact, maximum documentation." As the crew began preparations, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery would be different. The ruins seemed to pulse with an energy that their sensors couldn't quite identify, and the planet itself felt somehow alive despite showing no signs of current habitation. 6 hours later, Elena found herself standing on the planet's surface alongside Dr. Chen, Dr. Kim, and 3 other specialists. The ruins stretched before them like a crystalline city frozen in time. Towering spires of translucent blue-green material caught the system's dual suns, casting rainbow patterns across the ancient streets. "Incredible," whispered Dr. Martinez, the team's linguistic expert. "Look at these inscriptions. The writing system is completely unique, but there's something familiar about the mathematical progressions." Elena approached one of the larger structures, noting how the crystalline walls seemed to shimmer with internal light. As she placed her hand against the surface, a gentle warmth spread through her palm. The material felt alive, responding to her touch with subtle pulses of luminescence. "Commander, you need to see this," Dr. Kim called from deeper within the ruins. Her voice carried an urgency that made Elena's instincts sharpen. Following the sound, Elena found her team gathered around what appeared to be a central chamber. The room was dominated by a massive crystalline formation that pulsed with steady rhythmic light. Ancient symbols covered every surface, and the air hummed with an energy that made their hair stand on end. "It's some kind of recording device," Dr. Chen explained, his scanner beeping rapidly. "The crystal formation is storing massive amounts of data, thousands of years' worth by our estimates." Dr. Martinez was already working on the inscription translations. "Commander, I'm getting fragments of the language. It seems to be a warning of some kind. Something about guardians. Protectors." Elena stepped closer to the central crystal, feeling drawn by its hypnotic pulse. As she approached, the entire chamber began to resonate with a low harmonic tone. The crystals throughout the room brightened, and suddenly the air filled with holographic images. The team watched in awe as scenes from the ancient civilization played out before them. They saw a species of tall, elegant beings with elongated limbs and large, multifaceted eyes. The beings moved with grace and purpose, their society clearly advanced beyond anything the current Galactic Confederation had achieved. "They're beautiful," Dr. Kim whispered, watching the holographic figures go about their daily lives. But the images soon shifted, showing the approach of something dark and menacing. Ships unlike anything in the Confederation's records descended from space, and the peaceful civilization found itself under attack. The beings' crystal cities crumbled under weapons of immense power, and their people scattered to the winds. Elena watched with growing unease as the final scenes played out. The last survivors gathered in this very chamber, placing their hands on the central crystal just as she had done. Their sacrifice was evident. They were encoding their memories, their warnings, their hopes into the crystalline matrix. The hologram faded, but the crystal continued to pulse. Dr. Martinez looked up from his translations, his face pale. "Commander, the final message. It's addressed to whoever finds this place. They call them the Inheritors of Compassion. They're warning about something called the Devourers, a species that consumes entire civilizations, leaving nothing behind." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. How long ago did this happen? According to the stellar alignments in the recordings, Dr. Chen calculated quickly, approximately 11,800 years ago. The implications hit the team simultaneously. Whatever had destroyed this advanced civilization was still out there, somewhere in the galaxy. And if the Devourers followed patterns, they would eventually return to finish what they had started. "Commander," Dr. Kim said quietly, "there's something else. The crystal isn't just showing us the past. It's been waiting. The energy readings suggest it's been maintaining itself all this time, preserving this message for whoever would come next." Elena stared at the pulsing crystal, understanding the weight of what they had discovered. The ancient beings had left more than just a warning. They had left a responsibility. As she reached out to touch the crystal again, she felt the connection strengthen, and suddenly she could sense something vast and patient awakening in response to their presence. The Aurora's Dream and her crew had stumbled onto something far more significant than archaeological ruins. They had found the key to a mystery that stretched back thousands of years, and Elena suspected their quiet research mission was about to become something much more dangerous. Elena's hand remained pressed against the crystal as waves of information flooded her consciousness. Images, emotions, and knowledge from the ancient civilization flowed through her mind like a river of light. She saw their final days with startling clarity, the terror in their large eyes as the Devourer ships blotted out their sons, the desperate scramble to preserve their legacy before everything they had built turned to ash. "Commander," Dr. Chen's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Your vitals are spiking. Step away from the crystal." But Elena couldn't move. The connection was too strong, too important. Through the neural link, she experienced the last thoughts of the beings who had stood in this exact spot millennia ago. Their leader, someone called the First Speaker, had made the ultimate sacrifice, encoding not just memories but a piece of their living consciousness into the crystal matrix. "You must understand," a voice whispered in her mind, ancient beyond measure. "The Devourers do not simply kill. They consume the very essence of life itself. They turn thriving worlds into empty husks, stealing not just lives but the potential for life to ever return." Elena gasped as the connection suddenly severed, leaving her stumbling backward into Dr. Chen's arms. Her team surrounded her with concerned faces, scanners beeping frantically as they checked her condition. "What happened?" Dr. Kim asked, helping Elena steady herself. "You were connected to that thing for almost 10 minutes. "I saw them," Elena whispered, her voice hoarse. "The last of their kind. They didn't just leave us a warning, they left us a weapon." Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ruins. The crystalline structures around them flared with brilliant light, and the ground beneath their feet hummed with sudden energy. "What's triggering this?" Dr. Martinez shouted over the rising noise. Elena looked at the central crystal, which now pulsed with urgent, rapid flashes. "It's detecting something. The Devourers, they're coming back." High above them, aboard the Aurora's Dream, Communications Officer Lisa Park frantically tried to raise the away team. Her screens showed massive energy signatures approaching the system's edge, signatures that didn't match any known Confederation technology. "Captain Reeves," she called to Elena's second-in-command. "I'm picking up multiple contacts coming out of hyperspace. They're big, sir. Really big." Captain Marcus Reeves, a steady man in his 50s who had served under Elena for 8 years, moved quickly to the command station. The main screen showed 3 enormous vessels, each one easily 5 times the size of their research ship. Their design was unlike anything in the Confederation databases, organic curves mixed with mechanical brutality, as if the ships had been grown rather than built. "Are they responding to hails?" Reeves asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Negative, sir. They're not even acknowledging our presence, but they're moving in a direct line toward the planet." Down in the ruins, Elena felt the first speaker's consciousness stirring within the crystal again. This time, the contact was gentler, more controlled. "They have found us again," the ancient voice said. "But this time we are not alone. Your species. There is something different about you. Something the Devourers have not encountered before." "What do you mean?" Elena asked aloud, ignoring her team's worried glances. "Your people do not simply survive, you endure. You adapt. You fight not just for yourselves, but for others. This is why the crystal chose you. This is why we have waited." The ruins around them began to transform. Ancient mechanisms hidden within the crystalline structures activated for the first time in 12 millennia. The ground split open to reveal chambers filled with technology that seemed to blend crystal and metal in impossible ways. "Commander," Dr. Chen said, his scanner readings going wild. "The entire city is coming online. Power levels are off the charts," Elena understood now. The ancient civilization hadn't just built a memorial, they had built a fortress. A last-stand defense system waiting for the day the Devourers returned. But it needed something to activate it, something that could interface with their crystalline technology. "It needs a neural link," she realized. The first speaker sacrificed themselves to become the system's consciousness, but they can't operate it alone. They need someone alive, someone who can bridge the gap between their technology and biological thought. "Commander, no," Dr. Kim said firmly. "We don't know what that kind of connection could do to you." Elena looked at her team, good people, scientists, and explorers who had signed up for the wonder of discovery, not for war. Above them, she knew the Devourer ships were approaching, carrying death for everything in this system. "Get back to the ship," she ordered. "Now." "We're not leaving you," Dr. Chen said stubbornly. "That's an order." Elena's command voice cut through their protests. "Someone needs to warn the Confederation. Send a message to Earth, to the Council worlds, to anyone who will listen. Tell them the Devourers are real, and they're coming." As her team reluctantly began their retreat, Elena turned back to the crystal. The first speaker's presence was stronger now, more focused. "Are you certain?" the ancient consciousness asked. "Once you join with us, there may be no return. The neural integration required to operate our defenses is permanent." Elena thought of the images she had seen. Entire worlds reduced to lifeless rock. Billions of souls extinguished in the Devourer's endless hunger. She thought of Earth, of the Confederation worlds, of all the species who had no idea what was coming for them. "I'm certain," she said, placing both hands on the crystal. The connection this time was like lightning. Elena felt her consciousness expand beyond her physical form, merging with the vast network of crystalline technology throughout the ruined city. Suddenly, she could perceive the approaching Devourer ships with perfect clarity. 3 massive vessels filled with creatures that existed to consume and destroy. But she could also feel something else. The crystal network wasn't limited to this one planet. Traces of the ancient civilization's technology existed throughout the galaxy, waiting dormant on dozens of worlds. And now, through her neural link, Elena could awaken them all. The first speaker's consciousness flowed alongside hers, sharing knowledge accumulated over thousands of years of planning and preparation. "Now you understand," the ancient voice said. "We did not simply hide and wait. We prepared. We seeded the galaxy with our technology, creating a network of defenses that could be activated when the time came. But we needed someone like you, someone who fights not for conquest but for protection." Elena felt the power of the entire network flowing through her consciousness. Weapons that could crack planets, shields that could protect entire star systems, and communication arrays that could coordinate defenses across thousands of light years. For the first time in 12,000 years, the galaxy had a chance to fight back against the Devourers. But Elena knew that even with all this ancient technology, the battle ahead would require something more than weapons and shields. It would require the one thing humans had always excelled at: the refusal to give up, no matter how impossible the odds became. The transformation was immediate and overwhelming. Elena's consciousness expanded across the crystalline network, her awareness stretching to encompass defensive installations on dozens of worlds. Through sensors embedded in ancient ruins scattered throughout the galaxy, she could perceive the true scope of the Devourer threat. They weren't just 3 ships. The vessels approaching this system were scouts, the advance guard of a fleet so massive it defied comprehension. Thousands of biomechanical monstrosities drifted through deep space, following migration patterns established over millions of years. They moved from galaxy to galaxy like cosmic locusts, leaving nothing but empty shells of worlds in their wake. Now you see the true scale of what we faced. The first speaker's consciousness merged with hers. Your species calls this impossible. We called it Tuesday. Elena felt a strange mixture of terror and determination. The ancient being's dry humor reminded her that even in the face of galactic extinction, intelligence and will could find a way to endure. Above the planet, the 3 Devourer ships had entered the system's inner zone. Captain Reeves watched helplessly as his sensors registered energy signatures that shouldn't exist. The alien vessels seemed to bend space around themselves, creating distortions that made his instruments scream warnings. "Sir, the away team made it back," Communications Officer Park reported. "But Commander Vasquez isn't with them." "What do you mean she isn't with them?" Reeves demanded. Dr. Chen's voice crackled over the comm system, exhaustion and worry evident in every word. "Captain, she's connected to their defense system. She's become part of it. The entire ruined city is responding to her neural patterns." Through the ship's viewports, the crew could see the ancient crystalline structures on the planet's surface blazing with light. Beams of energy reached up from the ruins like fingers of pure force, creating a protective dome over the archaeological site. The Devourer ships noticed the activation. Their organic hulls rippled with bioluminescent patterns as they communicated with each other through methods that bypassed normal spacetime. Elena could feel their attention turning toward the planet like the gaze of hungry predators. "They are curious," the first speaker observed. "It has been many cycles since they encountered active resistance. They remember our people only as a minor inconvenience from long ago." Elena accessed the defensive network's memory banks, downloading 12,000 years of accumulated data about Devourer tactics and biology. What she learned made her stomach turn. The creatures weren't truly alive in any sense that biological species would understand. They were something between parasites and machines, evolved to harvest the quantum energy that living consciousness produced. When they consumed a world, they didn't just kill the inhabitants. They absorbed their thoughts, memories, and dreams, feeding on the very essence of what made life meaningful. Entire civilizations became nothing more than nutrients for their endless expansion. But they have a weakness, Elena realized, seeing patterns in the ancient data that the first speaker's people had never fully understood. They can't create. They can only consume and replicate. They've never encountered a species that adapts as quickly as humans do. The first Devourer ship launched its attack. Weapons that operated on principles beyond current scientific understanding focused devastating energy toward the planet's surface. The crystalline shield Elena had raised absorbed the blast, but she felt the strain immediately. Each impact sent waves of pain through her expanded consciousness. "You cannot sustain this alone," the first speaker warned. "The network requires multiple neural interfaces to operate at full capacity. Our people designed it for a species that thought collectively, not individually." Elena gritted her teeth against the pain, drawing on reserves of determination she didn't know she possessed. Through the network, she reached out to every human ship in the immediate sector, sending urgent transmissions to anyone who could receive them. Her message was simple and direct. "This is Commander Elena Vasquez. I am uploading coordinates and tactical data. The enemy we've always feared has found us. Every human in range, come now or there won't be anything left to save." The response was immediate. Captain Sarah Mitchell of the cargo hauler Steady Hand was the first to respond, her voice crackling across space. "Commander, we're 3 hours out at maximum burn. What do you need us to do?" "Link with the defense network," Elena replied, her consciousness already preparing the neural interface protocols. "I'll guide you through the connection process. But understand, once you're linked, you can't disconnect until this is over." More voices joined the comm channel. Lieutenant Commander James Wright from the patrol vessel Relentless, Captain Maria Santos from the research ship Deep Horizon, Mining Coordinator David Park from the asteroid processing station New Prosperity. 17 human vessels in total. carrying crews who had no military training and no weapons capable of threatening the Devourer ships. But they came anyway. Elena felt tears streaming down her physical face as she watched the sensor displays. Against impossible odds, against enemies that had consumed entire galactic civilizations, these ordinary humans were racing towards certain death simply because she had asked them to. This is what the Devourers have never encountered, she thought to the first speaker. They don't understand that humans don't fight just for themselves. We fight for each other. The second Devourer ship began its attack run, and Elena felt the strain on the defensive network intensifying. But as the first human vessels arrived and their crews linked their consciousness with the ancient systems, the burden became shared. Captain Mitchell's awareness merged with the network. Her lifetime of piloting experience instantly translated into targeting solutions for weapons that operated on crystalline matrices. Lieutenant Commander Wright's tactical training interfaced with shield generators that had protected worlds before humanity had even developed language. One by one, 17 human minds joined the ancient defense network, their individual skills and experiences creating something greater than the sum of its parts. The crystal city on the planet's surface blazed with light that could be seen from orbit as defensive systems that had slept for millennia roared back to life. The third Devourer ship launched a coordinated attack with its companions, focusing their combined firepower on the planet's surface. But now the network was fully operational, powered by human determination and guided by ancient wisdom. Elena felt the moment when everything changed. The defensive beam that erupted from the planet's surface didn't just destroy the first Devourer ship, it unmade it, unraveling the quantum bonds that held the creature's biomechanical form together. For the first time in millions of years, a Devourer had been not just defeated but completely eliminated. The remaining two ships recoiled in what could only be described as shock. Through the network sensors, Elena could feel their confusion radiating across space. In all their eons of existence, they had never encountered prey that could fight back effectively. Now, the first speaker's consciousness pulsed with something that might have been joy. Now they will learn what it means to face a species that refuses to be consumed. But Elena knew this was just the beginning. The destruction of one scout ship would bring the attention of the entire Devourer fleet. Somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, thousands of biomechanical monstrosities were already turning their attention toward this system. The real war was about to begin. The destruction of the first Devourer ship sent shockwaves through the network that Elena could feel in her bones. The remaining two ships pulled back to a safer distance, their biomechanical hulls rippling with patterns of light as they communicated with their distant fleet. Through the expanded consciousness of the crystal network, Elena sensed the moment when the enemy's message reached its destination. Somewhere in the void between galaxies, an intelligence vast and ancient turned its attention toward this small system where prey had dared to bite back. They are calling for reinforcements, the first speaker confirmed. The main fleet will arrive within 72 hours. When they come, they will bring enough force to sterilize every world in this sector. Elena felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her consciousness. 17 human crews had linked themselves to the defense network, trusting her with their lives and minds. But even with the ancient weapons at their disposal, she knew they couldn't hold against a full Devourer fleet unless, she thought, accessing deeper levels of the network's memory banks. We don't try to hold it all. The first speaker's consciousness stirred with interest as Elena explored tactical databases that had remained sealed for millennia. Hidden within the deepest archives were contingency plans that the ancient civilization had never had time to implement. The scattering protocol, Elena whispered, understanding flooding through her. You weren't just building defenses. You were preparing to take the fight to them. We had hoped, the first speaker replied, but our people ran out of time. The final fleet preparations were never completed. The activation sequences were never tested. Elena felt a grin spreading across her physical face. Then it's a good thing humans specialize in making things work that were never supposed to. Through the network, she reached out to the 17 human vessels now orbiting the planet. Their crews had been temporarily overwhelmed by the neural interface, but their minds were adapting with typical human resilience. Listen up, everyone, Elena broadcast through the shared consciousness. I know this is overwhelming, but we need to move fast. The enemy is calling for backup, and when they arrive, they'll have enough firepower to crack planets. Captain Mitchell's voice came through the link, strained but determined. What do you need us to do, Commander? We're going to activate something that's never been tested before, Elena explained, downloading the technical specifications directly into their minds. The ancient civilization built a network of quantum beacons throughout the galaxy. With the right activation sequence, we can turn every one of their ruins into a weapon. Lieutenant Commander Wright's tactical mind immediately grasped the implications. A galaxy-wide defense network. But Commander, the power requirements alone, that's where humans come in, Elena said. The network was designed for a species that thought collectively, but it couldn't handle the quantum variance of individual consciousness. Human minds are different. We're chaotic enough to provide the random elements the system needs to stabilize itself across galactic distances. Dr. Chen's voice joined the conversation, his scientific curiosity overriding his exhaustion. Commander, are you saying the network has been waiting for minds like ours specifically? Not waiting, the first speaker corrected. Hoping. We knew that someday a species might evolve that could complete what we started. We simply hoped we had built something worthy of that future. Elena began uploading activation protocols to each human vessel. The process was complex beyond anything previously attempted. Each ship would need to position itself at specific coordinates throughout the system, creating a quantum resonance pattern that could reach across the galaxy. This is insane, Captain Santos muttered, but her ship was already moving to its assigned position. We're talking about activating alien technology we don't understand, using principles that shouldn't exist. Welcome to being human, Elena replied. We've been doing impossible things since we figured out how to make fire. As the human vessels took their positions, Elena felt the network beginning to resonate with their combined consciousness. The crystalline structures on the planet's surface hummed with increasing frequency, and she could sense similar responses from ancient ruins scattered across hundreds of worlds. But something was wrong. The quantum harmonics weren't stabilizing the way the ancient protocols suggested they should. The human minds were providing the necessary chaos, but there was too much variance, too many individual thought patterns creating interference. The calculations are off, the first speaker observed. 17 minds are not sufficient for galaxy-wide activation. We need more neural interfaces. Elena felt her heart sink. They had reached out to every human vessel in range. There simply weren't enough people to make the protocol work. Then Captain Reeves's voice crackled through the communications array from the Aurora's dream. Commander, I'm reading massive quantum signatures throughout the system. What's your status down there? Marcus, Elena said, her voice heavy with frustration. We need more people. The network requires additional neural interfaces to stabilize, and we don't have enough crew. There was a long pause before Reeves responded. Commander, you might want to check your long-range sensors. Elena expanded her awareness through the network, reaching out beyond the immediate system. What she found made her gasp in amazement. Dozens of ships were approaching through hyperspace, human vessels from across the sector responding to her original distress call, mining ships from the asteroid belt, passenger liners that had diverted from their scheduled routes, military vessels that had broken off from patrol duties, even civilian craft carrying families who had insisted on coming despite the danger. I put out a general broadcast after your message, Reeves explained. Told them what was happening, what you were trying to do. Commander, they're all volunteering. Every human ship within a 50-light-year radius is heading our way. Elena felt tears streaming down her face as she watched the approaching vessels. Nearly 200 ships in total, carrying thousands of people who were willing to risk everything for a plan they didn't fully understand. Now I begin to comprehend why the network chose your species, the first speaker said, wonder evident in the ancient consciousness. You do not simply fight for survival. You fight for each other, even when logic suggests defeat is certain. As the first wave of reinforcements dropped out of hyperspace, Elena began expanding the neural interface protocols. Each new mind that linked with the network brought its own unique perspective and experiences. A kindergarten teacher from the agricultural colony of New Eden, a jazz musician from the orbital station around Kepler 77, and the elderly grandmother who had insisted on coming despite her family's protests, the quantum resonance pattern began to stabilize. As hundreds of human consciousness joined the network, Elena could feel the ancient ruins throughout the galaxy responding. their crystalline matrices awakening after 12,000 years of dormancy. But time was running out. The two remaining Devourer ships had completed their communication with the main fleet, and massive distortions in space-time indicated that reinforcements were arriving ahead of schedule. "The enemy is adapting," the first speaker warned. "They perceive the threat we represent. The main fleet is accelerating its approach." Elena accessed the network's tactical displays, watching as massive biomechanical shapes began dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge. Not dozens, but hundreds of Devourer ships, each one capable of reducing entire worlds to lifeless rock. "All vessels, this is it," Elena broadcast through the network. "Full activation in 60 seconds. Once we begin, we're committed. The network will either work or we'll all die together." Captain Mitchell's voice came through the link, calm and steady despite the impossible odds. "Commander, there's nowhere else we'd rather be." As Elena began the final activation sequence, she felt the combined will of thousands of humans flowing through the network. Teachers and miners, soldiers and artists, grandparents and children, all united by the simple refusal to let evil triumph. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when humanity stood together. The activation sequence began with a whisper that became a roar. Elena felt the consciousness of nearly 3,000 humans flowing through the crystalline network. Their combined will, creating quantum resonances that rippled across space-time itself. Ancient ruins on hundreds of worlds blazed to life simultaneously, creating a web of energy that spanned the galaxy. Through the network's expanded awareness, Elena could perceive the Devourer fleet in terrifying detail. Over 400 biomechanical ships had emerged from hyperspace, their organic hulls pulsing with predatory hunger. Each vessel was the size of a small moon, carrying millions of the parasitic entities that had consumed entire civilizations. "They are confused," the first speaker observed as the enemy fleet hesitated at the system's edge. "For eons, they have encountered only isolated defenses, individual worlds fighting alone. They do not understand what they are seeing now." Elena understood their confusion. The quantum signature of the activated network was unlike anything in their vast experience. Instead of the focused, harmonious thought patterns of most species, the human-powered system generated a chaotic symphony of individual consciousness that somehow created perfect order from apparent randomness. "All stations, report status," Elena broadcast through the network. Captain Mitchell's voice came through from her position near the outer planets. Quantum resonance holding steady. "My crew is, well, they're handling the neural interface better than expected." "That's an understatement," Lieutenant Commander Wright added. "Commander, I've got a 7-year-old girl on my ship who's somehow interfacing with targeting systems that our best tactical computers can't understand." Elena smiled despite the gravity of their situation. The network had been designed by a species that thought collectively, but human individuality was proving to be its greatest strength. Each mind brought unique perspectives and creative solutions that the ancient civilization could never have imagined. Through the quantum web, she could feel the network's weapons systems coming online across the galaxy. Planetary defense grids that had been dormant for millennia roared to life. Ancient satellites hidden in asteroid fields activated their targeting arrays. Even the ruins on Earth itself began to resonate with defensive energy. The Devourer fleet commander apparently decided that caution was unnecessary. The biomechanical ships began their approach, weapons charging with energy signatures that bent local space-time. Their strategy was simple and effective, overwhelming firepower applied without mercy, but Elena was ready for them. "All vessels, execute pattern Alpha," she commanded. The human ships scattered throughout the system began moving in what appeared to be random directions. To outside observers, it looked like panic, a desperate attempt to flee from overwhelming odds. But Elena could see the true pattern through the network. Each vessel was positioning itself to create maximum quantum resonance amplification. The first Devourer volley arrived like the wrath of gods. Energy beams that could vaporize moons focused on the positions where the human ships had been moments before. But the humans were no longer there, having moved with precision that defied conventional physics. Instead of striking their targets, the Devourer weapons hit the quantum resonance fields that the human vessels had created. The network absorbed the energy and redirected it through the crystalline matrix, amplifying it 1,000-fold before reflecting it back at the attackers. The results were spectacular. Instead of destroying human ships, the Devourer fleet found themselves under assault from their own weapons, magnified beyond their ability to defend against. 3 biomechanical vessels simply ceased to exist, unraveled at the quantum level by forces they had unleashed themselves. "Magnificent," the first speaker breathed. "We theorized this was possible but never believed it could be achieved. You are turning their greatest strength against them." Elena felt the satisfaction of the moment, but she knew the battle was far from over. The Devourer fleet was adapting with frightening speed, their biomechanical minds processing the new threat and developing countermeasures. "They're learning," she warned the network. "Next volley will be different." The enemy's second attack confirmed her fears. Instead of focused energy beams, the Devourer ships released clouds of self-replicating nanoorganisms designed to consume anything they encountered. The microscopic creatures spread through space like a gray plague, seeking to devour the quantum resonance fields themselves. But Elena had access to 12,000 years of accumulated knowledge about Devourer tactics. The ancient civilization had encountered these nanoswarms before and developed countermeasures. "Pattern Beta," she commanded. "Full-spectrum electromagnetic pulse." Every human vessel in the system simultaneously discharged their shields in coordinated electromagnetic bursts. The energy wave swept through space like an invisible storm, disrupting the nano-organisms' control systems and causing them to turn on each other in chaotic cannibalism. As the nanoswarm consumed itself, Elena felt the network reaching a critical threshold. The quantum resonance pattern was fully stabilized now, connected to defense installations throughout the galaxy. Ancient weapons that could crack planets were under human control, guided by minds that refused to accept defeat. "The moment has come," the first speaker said. "The network is ready for full activation, but understand, once we begin the final protocol, there is no retreat. The quantum energy required will burn out most of the crystalline matrices. This weapon can be used only once." Elena looked through the network at the Devourer fleet, still numbering in the hundreds despite their losses. Behind them she could sense even more ships approaching through hyperspace, the main battle fleet responding to the unexpected resistance. "How many?" she asked. "Thousands, perhaps tens of thousands. If we do not stop them here, they will spread throughout the galaxy like a plague. Every world, every species, every hope for the future will be consumed." Elena felt the weight of decision pressing down on her consciousness. She thought of Earth with its blue oceans and green continents. She thought of the Confederation worlds, with their diverse species working together toward a common future. She thought of all the children throughout the galaxy who deserved the chance to grow up in a universe not dominated by cosmic predators. But most of all, she thought of the nearly 3,000 humans who had linked their minds with hers, trusting her with their lives and their dreams. "All hands," she broadcast through the network, her voice reaching every human consciousness connected to the quantum web. "This is our moment. The decision we make now will determine the fate of every living thing in the galaxy. Are you with me?" The response was immediate and overwhelming. 3,000 voices speaking as one, their combined will creating a harmonic resonance that shook the foundations of space-time itself. "For Earth," Captain Mitchell said. "For the future," Lieutenant Commander Wright added. "For everyone who can't fight for themselves," whispered the 7-year-old girl whose mind had somehow mastered ancient targeting systems. Elena felt tears of pride and determination streaming down her face. Through the network, she could sense similar emotions from thousands of other humans. Fear transformed into resolve. Despair turned to hope. Individual consciousness united in common purpose. "Now," she thought, initiating the final sequence, "let's show the universe what happens when humanity refuses to give up." The galaxy-wide defense network activated with a burst of energy that could be detected from neighboring galactic clusters. On hundreds of worlds, ancient crystalline structures blazed with light as weapons designed by a lost civilization awakened under human control. The real battle was about to begin. The final activation sent shockwaves through the quantum fabric of reality itself. Elena felt the network's full power flowing through her consciousness as weapons beyond imagination came online. Across hundreds of worlds, ancient orbital platforms that had drifted dormant in deep space suddenly blazed with energy. Crystalline structures buried beneath the surfaces of dead worlds erupted through their planetary crusts, reaching toward the stars like the fingers of awakening gods. The Devourer fleet, numbering over 400 ships, found themselves facing something unprecedented in their millions of years of existence. Instead of isolated planetary defenses, they confronted a coordinated galactic network powered by minds that refused to surrender. Elena could perceive the enemy's confusion through quantum resonance patterns. The biomechanical entities had conquered countless galaxies, but they had never encountered resistance that spanned multiple star systems simultaneously. Their hive mind intelligence, so effective at coordinating massive fleets, struggled to comprehend the chaotic creativity of human consciousness. They are attempting to adapt, the first speaker warned. But their evolutionary patterns are too rigid. They cannot change fast enough to counter your unpredictability. The first galaxy-wide salvo erupted from installations scattered across 1,000 light-years. Energy beams that operated beyond conventional physics converged on the Devourer fleet from directions that shouldn't have been possible. Space itself seemed to fold as weapons fired through dimensional rifts, bypassing the enemy's shields entirely. Dozens of biomechanical ships simply vanished, erased from existence by forces that unraveled their quantum structure. Others found themselves pulled into artificial black holes that appeared and disappeared in nanoseconds. The most unlucky were caught in temporal distortion fields that aged them millions of years in the span of seconds, reducing massive vessels to cosmic dust. But the Devourers were learning. The surviving ships began generating quantum static, disrupting the network's targeting solutions. Their biomechanical hulls rippled with adaptive armor that absorbed and redistributed the energy attacks. Some vessels actually began to feed on the quantum energy itself, growing larger and more powerful with each strike. "They're adapting faster than we expected," Elena warned the network. Through their shared consciousness, she felt the concern of nearly 3,000 human minds. "We need to change tactics." 7-year-old Amy Chen, linked to the network from her position aboard the cargo hauler Steady Hand, suddenly spoke with the voice of someone far beyond her years. "Commander, what if we stop trying to destroy them and start trying to confuse them instead?" Elena paused, accessing the child's thought patterns through the quantum link. What she found there was brilliant in its simplicity. Amy had been observing the enemy's adaptation protocols and noticed something that the adult minds had missed. "The child sees clearly," the first speaker agreed. "The Devourers adapt to threats, but they cannot adapt to paradox. Their hive mind cannot process contradictory information. All stations," Elena broadcast, "new strategy, pattern Omega, maximum chaos deployment." Instead of coordinated attacks, the network began generating random contradictory signals. Weapons fired in patterns that made no tactical sense. Defense grids activated and deactivated without apparent logic. Some installations appeared to be attacking themselves while others seemed to flee from enemies that weren't there. The effect on the Devourer fleet was immediate and devastating. Their hive mind intelligence, so effective at processing consistent threats, simply couldn't handle the flood of nonsensical information. Ships began moving in random directions, their biomechanical crews paralyzed by conflicting adaptation protocols. "Now," Elena commanded, "while they're confused, all weapons concentrated fire." The galaxy-wide network focused its entire arsenal on the paralyzed Devourer fleet. This time there was no adaptation, no defensive evolution. The enemy ships were caught completely off guard, their consciousness overwhelmed by contradictory data streams. The destruction was absolute. 400 vessels that had terrorized galaxies for millions of years were reduced to expanding clouds of superheated plasma in the span of minutes. The quantum energy released by their destruction created aurora effects that could be seen from neighboring star systems. But Elena knew this was only the beginning. Through the network's deep space sensors, she could detect massive distortions in hyperspace as the main Devourer fleet responded to the loss of their advance forces. "They are coming," the first speaker confirmed. "Everything they have. The primary battle fleet that has consumed a dozen galaxies. This will be their final attempt to eliminate the threat we represent." Elena felt the network's crystalline matrices beginning to overload. The weapons discharge had pushed the ancient technology beyond its design limits. Cracks were appearing in structures that had endured for 12,000 years, and quantum resonance levels were fluctuating dangerously. Network status report, she called. Captain Mitchell's voice came through strained with exhaustion. Commander, my crew is hanging on, but the neural interface is burning out our organic systems. We can't maintain this level of connection much longer. Similar reports came from throughout the fleet. The human volunteers were paying a price for their linkage with the network. Some were aging rapidly as quantum energy flowed through their biological systems. Others found their memories becoming confused as alien knowledge overwrote human experiences. Elena felt her own consciousness fragmenting under the strain. Parts of her mind were becoming indistinguishable from the first speaker's ancient memories, while other sections struggled to maintain her human identity. You must choose, the first speaker said gently. The network can sustain one final attack before the crystalline matrices burn out completely, but the power required will consume every consciousness linked to the system. You and your people will become part of the network permanently, your individual identities merged with ours for eternity. Elena looked through the quantum sensors at the approaching main fleet. Thousands of biomechanical monstrosities, each one larger than anything in the advance force. Behind them came something even worse. A vessel so massive it defied comprehension. A biomechanical construct the size of a small moon that pulsed with the absorbed essence of countless consumed civilizations. The Devourer Prime, the original entity that had spawned the plague spreading across the universe. How long do we have? Elena asked. Minutes, perhaps less. When they arrive, they will have enough firepower to sterilize every world in this galactic sector. Elena felt the weight of decision crushing down on her consciousness. She thought of the 3,000 humans who had trusted her with their lives, who had volunteered for a mission they knew was almost certainly suicide. She thought of Earth, of the Confederation worlds, of all the species and civilizations that would fall if the Devourers weren't stopped here and now. But most of all, she thought of Amy Chen, the 7-year-old girl whose brilliant mind had turned the tide of battle. The child deserved to grow up in a universe where creativity and hope could flourish instead of being consumed by cosmic predators. Through the network, Elena reached out to every human consciousness linked to the system. You've all heard the situation, she said simply. One final strike, but it costs everything. Your call. The response was immediate and unanimous. 3,000 voices speaking with one will. Their combined determination creating quantum resonances that stabilize the failing network matrices. Do it, Captain Mitchell said for all of them. Make it count. Elena felt tears streaming down her face as she initiated the final sequence. The entire galaxy-wide network began channeling its remaining energy into a single, impossible weapon. Ancient technology merged with human creativity to create something that had never existed before, a quantum cascade that could unmake matter at the subatomic level. As the Devourer Prime Fleet dropped out of hyperspace, they found themselves facing not just weapons, but the combined will of a species that refused to be consumed. The quantum cascade erupted from every networked installation simultaneously, creating a wave of destructive energy that swept across the entire star system. The Devourer Prime itself, the entity that had terrorized the universe for millions of years, found itself caught in a paradox that even its vast intelligence couldn't process. The cascade didn't just destroy its physical form. It unraveled the very concept of its existence, erasing it from reality so completely that the universe itself forgot it had ever been. As the energy wave faded, Elena felt the network shutting down around her. The crystalline matrices were burning out one by one, their ancient purpose finally fulfilled. But something unexpected was happening. Instead of her consciousness being absorbed into the network, she felt it being gently released. Your task is complete, the first speaker said, the ancient voice filled with something that sounded like peace. The Devourers are ended. Your people are free to shape their own destiny. Live well, Elena Vasquez. You have given the galaxy a future. Elena's awareness snapped back to her physical body, standing alone in the crystal chamber on the planet's surface. Around her, the ancient structures were dark and silent, their power finally exhausted. But through the chamber's transparent walls, she could see something beautiful.